Webinars for the right one.
Okay.
Vaishnavi Saharini Partner. Forward.
Oh. So, fine. So I think this is the first class for you guys for chemistry, right? So fine. Let me introduce myself, and then you introduce yourself, right? So my name is Akash, right? So I'll be handling a few of the classes for you in chemistry, right? So what should I say? I am currently doing my PhD in chemistry from IISER Tirupati, okay, and I've been teaching for quite some years, almost 7-8 years, right? Okay, I think that's enough introduction about me, and then yeah, so we'll start. Just tell me your name, which school are you from, and that should be sufficient. Yes. Sorry? Your name is? Okay, fine. Huh. DA Public School. Okay. Okay. Sorry, is it school? Okay, Sunshine. Okay. DA Public School. Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So most of you are from DA Public School. Fine. So yes, so you know what chapters and all are there. But did you go through your textbook, science textbook? Okay. So you would have seen 5 chapters in chemistry. Like totally you'll have science. I don't know how many chapters in chemistry. You have 5 chapters. First one would be today what we are going to see, that is chemical reactions and equations. And you have second chapter in chemistry to be metal, acid bases. Okay, acid bases and salts. And then third would be metals and non-metals, periodic classification. That will be the fourth chapter. And at last, carbon-rich compounds. Right. All are interesting chapters. Right. You will be really able to get good insight into how a chemical reaction happens. What are the different types of chemical reaction? Say, if I go to periodic table, you'll understand why is there a need to even have a periodic table. How are you going to classify these elements, right? So you would have already studied in your lower classes, say in your 9th class. The first chapter you have studied was what is it? Matter in our surroundings. Is that right? Okay. So there you studied that matter is in, what is the definition of matter? What is the definition of matter? Absolutely right. So anything which has mass and occupies space is what is called as matter, right? So we know that every matter is made up of some elementary particles, right? So now these particles are going to have some amount of some properties as such. 3 main properties. Can you tell me what are the 3 main properties? Any particle. So basically all matter is made up of some particles, we say, right? So there are going to be 3 main properties of these particles which decides certain things. So what are the 3 main properties? No, not that. That is about the matter. The particles, if you speak, say one of the points I'll say, between each particle, there'll always be a space called as intermolecular space, right? And say the other point would be there will always be some force of attraction between 2 particles. Obviously, then only they'll be able to exist together, right? So, and then third point would be they are going to have kinetic energy. They're going to be constantly moving inside the matter. So, based on this, based on how much force of attraction we have, based on how much space is between the 2 atoms, right? On how much kinetic energy each of these particles will have, I'll be able to segregate them into solids, liquids, and gases. That we know, we have studied, right? So that is one way of classifying matter, right? Now there is another way that when I go to the second chapter, is matter around us pure, or we remember the chapter name, right? So you would have studied that matter again can be classified into 2 types. What are the 2 types in the second chapter? Pure substances and mixtures, right? Pure substances and mixtures. Okay, so we'll talk about mixtures later, right? So when I speak about these pure substances, right? So how do you define them? You define them like they're going to be made up of single entity, right? Okay, so this entity, that means it is going to be made up of single particle, I can say, right? Single entity or single particle. Now, this particle you should not confuse with atoms, right? Always atoms, I mean, particles need not be always atoms. It depends on what chemical species you're talking about, right? Okay, so these pure substances can be classified into two types. What are they? Absolutely, right? They'll be further classified into elements and compounds, right? So we know what do you mean by element. Element means it the single. So it's all about the single particle you're speaking about, right? So if I say there's an element, there the constituent particles are going to be atoms, is it not? Say for example, if I write sodium element, these are symbols. Anyways, we'll teach you this. I think you must have learned about symbols also in our classes. Anyways, this is sodium, right? Now sodium is an element, right? Now the elementary particles in this would be sodium atoms. As simple as that, right? Now, when I know how to make a compound, right? This is an element, right? Now the other classification which was compound, right? Say for example, if we take carbon dioxide, any compound you take. So you know what is a compound? When two or more elements combine together, right? And two or more elements combine together, and more specifically, it is an incomplete statement. How will you complete it? When two or more elements combine together in exactly in fixed ratios, is it not? Say if I can even mix sodium and iron, but they're not going to form any compound, right? It is just going to form mixture. That is the difference between a compound and a mixture. For a compound, the ratio matters. At what ratios you mix these elements matters, right? But for mixtures, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want according to your requirement, right? Okay, so here if I take a compound, as you said that they are the two elements combined together in fixed ratios to make a compound, right? So here the elementary particles which you have to speak about is, there it was atoms for elements, here it would be absolutely right. So two elements combined together, that means, can I say, how do you define a molecule? Again, two atoms combined together, two or more atoms combined together to form a molecule. So obviously two or more elements combined together to form a compound. Elements, atoms, so their elements are forming compounds. So obviously when two atoms mix together and in proper ratios, again they are going to be called as molecules, right? So the elementary substances, for element it is atom, and for a compound it is molecules. These are some basic stuff we have to know. Okay, now this is clear for us. Okay, now obviously we are talking about different reactions, right? The first chapter is chemical reactions and equations, right? So for us to even go into the chapter, right? So first and foremost thing, all we have to know is what are the chemical symbols for all the elements. That's the first thing you have to know, right? Okay. Second thing what you have to know is how to write a compound's formula. See, this is where people of your age, people coming to 10th class in this particular chapter, people will face difficulty only in these areas. Remembering symbols, that is one thing, and not remembering formulas. You are not going to mug up formulas from now on. That era is done, right? I will teach you how do you remember the formula, in the sense that how do you make the correct formula. I'll be able to teach you. I think you already studied it, but I'm going to insist on how to write the formula again, and then only we can go into these chapters. Okay, right. So first and foremost thing, what do you mean by a chemical reaction? What comes to your mind? If I ask you, right, what do you mean by a chemical reaction? Okay, so I understand. Say, for say, like if I have to talk in a layman's language, right? What do you mean by a reaction, right? Say I take him by his collar and I give him a slap. What will he do? One possibility is he might try, or second possibility is he might hit me back. Two possibilities, correct? So I am doing an action and he is giving me a reaction. That's all it is, right? So now all you again studied your Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Again, that statement is incomplete, even though we're not going to talk about physics today. Can you complete the statement? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's incomplete. Anybody wants to comment? Anybody wants to comment? How do you complete the statement? Okay, so every action has an equal and opposite reaction along the same line of action, in the sense that, say, if I slap somebody, if I slap them like this is my line of action, right? So how is it going to be his reaction? Reaction is going to move this side or that side, but you see, the reaction will be on the same line of action. This is my line of action. The line of reaction is also this. So anyways, this is little physics. So anyways, what you're trying to speak is there is going to be some action which is going to create a reaction, and we are going to speak this in terms of chemistry. How are you going to do it? Say I take two chemical species, right? Now when they are little far away from each other, there's no interaction. There's nothing, right? But when they are in contact, right, when that is the actions you are doing, bringing them in contact, and also making sure that you provide certain things for them to give a reaction. As simple as that, right? What is the reaction? Reaction is basically giving you a compound or some other compound, or various different kinds of possibilities are there, right? So what you're going to see is very simply you're going to do is bring two chemical species in contact, as simple as that, right? But most of the time, right, what will you see is just bringing them in contact is not sufficient for them to show any result. In the sense, what is the result? Chemical reaction is the result, right? So just by bringing them in contact is not sufficient. So what we have to do? We have to provide, say, there are something called as reaction conditions, right? Only in those conditions that particular reaction will happen. So what do you think are the parameters I can vary? Tell me. So just bringing them in contact is one condition, definitely. What do you think can be the other conditions? What are the parameters you can vary? Definitely providing some amount of heat, or say decreasing basically temperature is what we are talking about, right? Say increasing the temperature. Certain reactions will happen only when I supply some amount of heat, say at higher temperature. Some reactions will happen only at lower temperatures. That is one of the criteria. Any other criteria, any other condition you can think of? Temperature is one. Okay. Then people are online, you can also answer, right? You're also there. Other thing I can just looking at normal, like say looking at it with respect to logic, pressure can also be a criteria, right? See, you are trying to boil water, okay? You boil water in Chennai. You go to Jammu and Kashmir and you boil the water. There will always be some subtle changes there and there, right? Temperature might vary, or say what you understand is here the pressure I can approximately say it as 1 atm. We'll come to it. Maybe the units and all you'll study better when you go to higher classes. But for now, just understand that 1 atm. Atm is atmospheric pressure. Okay, so 1 is the value in Chennai or near sea level generally, right? But when I go to higher and higher altitudes, you will find that the pressure will be decreasing. Okay, so at that time, when you go to Jammu and Kashmir and you try to boil rice, or we say you try to boil any say a liquid, it is actually going to be, it is going, the boiling point, we generally say it is 100 degrees Celsius for water, right? That 100 degrees Celsius might not be there in Jammu and Kashmir, or say any other hilly region, right? So what I understand, it is not a chemical reaction, obviously, just a boiling physical process. But for a physical process itself, if pressure can make such a difference, definitely for a chemical reaction, it does have a role to play, right? So temperature, pressure, you must have learned about pH. We'll study about it, don't worry. In your next chapter, in your acid, bases and salt, pH is basically how much amount of acid content I have, how much amount of basic content I have, right? So all these things matters for a particular chemical reaction to happen. Say whatever condition you provide for one chemical reaction might not be same for some other chemical reaction. Please understand, it's not like this reaction happens at 80 degrees Celsius. See, A plus B happens at 80 degrees. C plus D will also happen at 80 degrees. No, it's not like that, right? So, if you understand this particular subject very, like say chemistry as a whole, if you can appreciate it, if you can learn it, what is the consequence? What are you going to get? How you are going to get benefited? Is you will be able to predict what should be the reaction conditions for the reaction to happen. Is it not? Now, how will you predict it? For that, you have to understand about what are the chemical species which are undergoing the reaction. Whether it's sodium or magnesium or carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, what is undergoing the reaction? What are the things that are kept in contact? What are their properties? What are their atomic radii? So many stuff. You don't have to go to the details, right? So all you have to understand what are the things you have to, for me to predict the product, or say for me to predict whether the reaction will happen or not at a particular condition, you have to study about these chemical species, the properties of these chemical species, right? So based on that only the formula comes, based on only how whether the reaction will happen or not, you will get to know, right? All these stuff matters. Okay, fine, right? So we understood on a broad sense that what do you mean by a chemical reaction? Basically, two chemical species in contact, right? I provide some conditions, temperature, pressure, so many other stuff, and something is going to happen. That something is what is going to be called as your reaction, chemical reaction. As simple as that. Okay, fine. Now, you must have seen so many chemical reactions in day-to-day life, right? The very process by which we get food from plants, what is it? What is the process called as? Photosynthesis, right? So that again is a complex chemical reaction. If I give you the chemical reaction now, you'll run away from this area. Like you'll not even sit here. It's kind of a complex chemical reaction, right? But all you have to understand is chemical reactions are going to be the essence of life, right? Say in your body you take, right? So you know you have proteins, DNA, RNA, all these fancy words you would have heard about, right? So if I go to the cellular level, right? If I take a cell, right? So in a cell, basically, I'm going to have, you know, some biology. I'm not a biologist. I know some little there and there. You must have known better, right? So in a cell, I'm going to have something called as, what is the nucleus, right? So in that nucleus only, I have your DNA and RNA. First, basically, DNA will be there. And that DNA will be converted into RNA with the help of a chemical reaction. Again, that RNA will be converted into proteins with the help of some other reaction, right? And we talked about conditions at which the reaction will happen. We spoke about temperature, pressure. I told about pH. There is one more thing which is very important. Can you think of that? Can you think of anything which will help in a chemical reaction? Any term which you have heard in your lower classes? Blinks. Anything which helps in a chemical reaction? Anything can you think of? I'm not sure whether you have heard of it, but if you can get the term out. Have you ever heard the term catalyst? No? Nobody has heard? Okay. You have heard? Okay, good. Right. So what do you mean by catalyst? Say I told you, again, chemical species in contact, you provide the temperature, you provide the correct pressure, but still some reactions might not happen. Or some reactions will happen, but they'll be very slow. We'll not be able to see the appreciable changes. Right? So at that time, what I do is I add an extra chemical species. Okay, I add an extra chemical species which is going to make this chemical reaction faster. Right? That particular chemical species I add to make the reaction more efficient is what is called as your catalyst. Right? So in our body, we have our own biological catalyst. So I told you, DNA converts to RNA, RNA converts to proteins. You don't have to remember anything. It's all just for you to understand that chemical reactions are everywhere. Okay, so DNA converts to RNA, RNA converts to protein. Again, for these reactions, I need some catalyst. Where are the catalysts coming from? That is also produced by our own body, again with the help of same chemical reactions. These biological catalysts are what are called as your enzymes. Again, this term you would have heard, enzymes in the body, right? So these enzymes are nothing but biological catalysts, which will make sure that the biochemical reaction, not a biochemical, so much fancy words we're using here. Do not worry, biochemical, inside our body chemical reaction, right? So for the biochemical reactions to happen, there will be biological catalysts called as enzymes. Photosynthesis, again, plants have their own enzymes, right? So anything you see, any tablet you take, right? Any tablet you take again is produced with the help of chemicals. Chemical reactions will happen. Right? Say milk getting converted to curd, again is a chemical reaction, right? So like you put all the pulses and vegetables on, you make sambar, eventually it's again a chemical reaction. Maybe mostly it is more physical, but definitely there will be some chemical changes, right? Okay, so now let me ask you a question. What do you mean by a physical change and what do you mean by a chemical change? What can you say about it? Okay, makes sense, right? So, in again in layman's language, we have to put it, right? Whatever changes I'll be able to see, again, it's a very generic statement. It might not be applicable for all the cases, but again, generally speaking, right? So, anything which I'll be able to visualize with my own eyes, generally are chemical change. That is what you said as appearance, right? Say I have some amount of water, I boil it, it is in liquid phase. Now you will see the same thing in gaseous phase, right? That is a physical change, right? But chemical changes, we are talking about the single entities. We spoke about atoms, we spoke about molecules, right? If you find that there is a change in this ratio, if there is a change in this chemical composition, that is what is called as your chemical change, right? So basically a chemical reaction is a chemical change, as simple as that. There will be changes in the atomic level, there will be changes in the molecular level of the chemical species, right? So now we understood, okay, why we are studying about chemical reactions, what are chemical reactions basically, and we are going to move still more ahead, and still we're going to understand how do you write a chemical reaction. And for that, as I told you, two things are very important. One, knowing the symbols of elements. You have to know it, guys. You have to know it, or else you'll find so much difficulty in this chapter. Second, how do you write a formula? How do you write the chemical formula for a compound? It's as simple as that. Right? Okay, you already know so many compounds you have been using from your lower classes. Say you know carbon dioxide is CO2, sodium chloride is NaCl, so on and so forth. But again, like this, eventually you will get used to it. But that shouldn't be the case. Eventually you will get used to it. But how you start it, how you remember the formula, how do you say what do you say? What are the procedures you follow in writing the formula? All these are very important. And see, one time you're going to do, 2 times you're going to do, 10 times you're going to do, but after that, eventually how you remember carbon dioxide means CO2. Even if I tell you a compound, a very complex structure, you will be able to write the chemical formula. That is how it is, right? So at the basic level, if you're going to be very strong, right, even if I'm going to go for very high levels of chemistry, the basics are going to be very helpful. Maybe you don't at that time, whatever I'm going to tell you, you might not use it, but eventually it will come automatically. Okay, this is going to be the formula. That is how it's going to be. Is it fine? Cool. Right. So, for us to write the compounds formula, as I obviously have to know the symbols of all the elements. And second thing about what you have to know is you have to know about what is the atomic numbers of all the elements. At least till 40, 1 to 40, you should know in your fingertips. If I ask you, what is the element having atomic number of 13? What is it? Aluminium. So like this you should remember. Okay, so this is more of a mugging up case, but again, if you can remember the periodic table, we'll study about it, right? So I'll tell you at that time, you don't have to remember the what to say, you don't have to remember what is the exact atomic number of a particular element. If you can remember where that particular element is present in the periodic table, say you again you'd have had some idea there is something called as groups, there's something called as periods. Yes, you don't have to know about it, but again you should have heard about it. That's all I want, right? So basically that is, these groups and periods determine which position that particular element is present in the periodic table. And if you know that, again you don't have to remember the atomic numbers. Eventually it is going to come. Okay, right. So, but for now, we didn't go to the chapter yet, but for now, you have to know the atomic numbers of at least first 40 elements in the periodic table. Okay, right, fine. That if you know, then we can move on. Okay, fine guys. Now, I have two elements with me. Okay, I have to say sodium and chlorine I know they're going to, if I'm going to make them together and provide the necessary conditions, they're going to form sodium chloride. Okay, fine. Right. Now, why is it that the formula is NaCl and not say NaCl2 or say Na2Cl? Why don't I write it like this? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, right. Oh, what is it? Absolutely. Right, where the valence is coming from, again it's coming from the knowledge of atomic numbers. Is it not? Right, so you have that's why I'm insisting again and again and again, knowing the atomic numbers is very, very important. At least even if you don't know the atomic numbers, at least you must know the valencies of the elements. But again, if you know that, eventually this is going to come. Right, okay. Fine. So now, okay, fine, we understand that if I bring sodium and chlorine together, it is going to form sodium chloride. Why? Why is it like this? Why is it that the sodium can be in the form of sodium only and chlorine can be in the form of chlorine only? Why is it that it is reacting to form sodium chloride?
They want to complete their octet.
I understand. Okay, fine. So you said about the octet rule. If I satisfy octet, what are the elements going to get? Your answer is correct, right? Because they will have to satisfy the octet, right? We'll see about it again. We'll again see how to write the formulas. So for satisfying the octet, right? So you said that they are forming this compound, sir. Okay, correct. Why do they have to satisfy octet? That's the point, right? Please understand, people, not this one. Any chemical reaction you take, any chemical reaction, or any two elements combined together form a compound, right? All these happens because the chemical species want to attain stability. That's always the answer. Why a chemical reaction happens? Because the chemical species involved in this have to get stabilized. Right, now you know that one of the criteria for getting stability is octet rule or Euclid rule, right? But when I go to higher classes, when you come to 11th class, you will see that that is not the only criteria. There are some other criteria involved, but again we don't have to worry about it. For now, for this level, all we have to understand is octet rule. Okay, right. So maybe if I can see how this NaCl, if I can give you one example, then we can move on. Right, say sodium, or the atomic number? 11, right? So 11, if I know atomic number, I can write what is called as electronic configuration, right? So you know, again, going to the basics of your 9th class, this formula is what you'll remember, 2n squared, right, where n is the shell number. What is the shell? K shell means 1, and L shell means 2, M shell means 3, so on and so forth. Okay, so now according to this formula, that this basically tells you in a particular shell what is the maximum number of electrons which can be placed. Right? Okay, so based on all this, what is the electronic configuration of sodium? Absolutely, 2, 8, 1. Okay, right. Say now chlorine. Same thing. I'll take atomic number 17. See guys, like some of you know, some of you don't know, but after you go home today, the only homework I'm giving you is to know the atomic numbers and nothing else. Okay, fine. So now same way, if I write the electronic configuration, what would it be? 2, 8, 7. See, please understand, first shell can have a maximum of 2 electrons only. Second shell can have a maximum of 8 electrons only. Third shell also 8 electrons. Now you can ask me, sir, if I put 2 into 3 squared, that is for the third shell, 3 squared is 9, so I should be getting 18. Right? So to answer this question, we will all meet again in 11th class. Okay? Right? Because even if I tell you why this happens, why? Because for example, if I take calcium, atomic number 20, you write the electronic configuration as 2, 8, 8, 2. You don't write as 2, 8, 10. Right? There are reasons to this. Right? So if I have to give you a glimpse of why is it, please understand, you say L shell, M shell and all these things, these are the main shells. Okay? For all of these, I am going to have something called as subshells. Okay, so one shell will have say 1 or more or 2 or more subshells. So again, we don't have to go into the details. Again, I tell you, if you're really interested, maybe we can have a special class for that. But again, not now. After we finish all the portions, right? At that time, we'll see about it. Why is it that third shell can have only 8 electrons? We'll speak about it. Okay, for now, you don't have to worry. But for now, the only exception to this formula is third shell. Okay, we can have only maximum of 8 electrons in the third shell also. For now, you just have to know it, nothing else. Don't worry about it. Why? Don't worry about it. Okay, fine. So we are talking about how sodium NaCl is the formula for sodium chloride. Okay, fine. So we look. These are the electronic configurations: 2, 8, 1 for sodium, 2, 8, 7 for chlorine. Right now, use an octet. Right, and that is what we are going to do here, right? So for sodium to get stabilized, in the sense, for sodium to get octet satisfied, again there are two possibilities, isn't it? One is I can remove this 1 electron, or I'll be able to add 7 more electrons to make it 2, 8, 8. Right? Now again guys, one thumb rule in chemistry. Thumb rule, not only for this is a very simple thing. Right? Even if you find a very complex stuff happening in some chemical reaction, the only thumb rule is any chemical reaction will happen at the expense of minimum energy. Right? You have, so see, from going to here to that corner, there are multiple paths I can take. I can go straight, I can go like this, I can go like this, whatever it is. But what will I choose is the path where I spend minimum energy. Is it not? Obviously, everybody will choose that. We don't want to get tired, isn't it? Same way, if there are multiple paths for a chemical reaction to happen, the chemical species will choose the path where the energy expenditure, the energy spent by the molecules, that is one of the energy, or say, we have something called as endothermic reactions where we have to spend energy. Either way, any energy concentration you are going to take, that energy concentration, the energy expense should be minimum, and that path only will be taken. Okay, so here again we have two paths: removing 1 electron, adding 7 electron, and by logic you can easily understand that adding 7 electron is going to have high cost of energy. So obviously we will not do that. We will not do that. It's not we will not do that. The element will not do it, isn't it? Right? So obviously we'll try to remove only 1 electron. Okay, fine. So sodium will, from that I remove an electron. See, okay. Right. So fine. Anyways, concentrate on fine. So sodium will lose an electron. Now I have a neutral species. Right. From that I take out something negative. Obviously the remaining will become positive, and that's exactly what is going to happen here. Sodium is neutral. I remove a negative species, that is my electron. Obviously now sodium is going to get positive charge. Now please understand, right? The amount of positive charge is going to depend upon how much amount of negative charge you removed, isn't it? Right? If you remove one electron which is having a charge of -1, the remaining species will have a positive charge of +1. It's very simple. Overall, it should be neutral. There's something called as charge balance, which you have to maintain always during a chemical reaction also. We'll speak about it later. Right, so for now, sodium, this is how we write the ions. We all know that, right? Sodium, the element, power, the charge. That's how we write always. Okay, fine. Now, chlorine, we saw what is the electronic configuration. It is 2, 8, 7. Again, two possibilities, removing 7 electrons, adding 1 electron. Again, energy consideration, adding 1 electron is only easier. Okay, fine. So, chlorine will accept an electron. Again, something neutral, adding something negative to it. Obviously, I am going to form a negative charge. Again, how much negative charge will depend on how much negative charge we are adding. Yes, ma'am. Understood? Yes. So it is going to form Cl1 minus. We don't generally write if it's mono positive or mono negative. We don't write the number 1. We just write the sign directly, plus or minus. That's it. Okay. Now that's it. Now you have sodium plus, Cl minus. Now, since they are monopositive, you don't have to worry about the numbers. So basically, if there were some numbers, what will you do? If at all I have, this is 1, this is 1, I will put this 1 here, I will put this 1 here, crisscross method, you learned in 9th class, right? Easily I'll be able to get the formula. Okay, easy, right? Okay, now, say we'll take some other example. So, you understand, what you understand is knowing the atomic number is very important. Knowing the electronic configuration is very important, and knowing octet rule is again very important. And based on all this, from now on, you really don't have to mug up the formulas. That's it. You don't have to do it. Okay, right. So fine, sir. Okay, these are ionic species. Now remember, between two elements, we call it as a bond, chemical bond, right? Nothing. Bond is the attractive force. That's it. You don't have to. It's not a big word and all. Two two elements, say sodium and chlorine, right? Now you see sodium and chlorine. What kind of bond they are going to have? See, sodium is a fully positive charge. Sodium plus ion, cation, we call it, right? And Cl minus is a negative ion called as anion, right? So obviously, from the electrostatics, they understand that unlike charges attract each other, right? And that's how this sodium and chlorine exist together. Obviously, there should be some amount of attractive force keeping them together, isn't it? And that attractive force is merely an electrostatic force of attraction between the sodium positive and the chlorine negative, cation and the anion. Okay, fine, this I understand, sir. What if there is other type of bond called as covalent bond? This is an ionic bond because I have ions getting formed. Cation is getting formed, anion is getting formed. So whenever you see these ions getting formed, the bond between them, the electrostatic force we are speaking about, is what is called as your ionic bond. Okay, right. But you must have seen so many compounds where these ions are not getting formed. Okay, so at that time, how will I write the formula? This is easy. Okay, fine. I'll crisscross the valencies and then I'll do it. Same thing works almost for everything. If you know the electronic configuration, if you know what is the valency, again you will be able to crisscross them and to write the formula. We'll take covalent compound and see whether it works. Okay. Say, let me take carbon dioxide. We know the formula CO2. Let me see if it comes via this method. Okay, fine. So carbon, again, first step is to write the atomic number of carbon. 6 is the atomic number, right? 6 is the atomic number, and obviously the electronic configuration is 2, 4. Okay. Oxygen. 1 second. Yeah, oxygen is how much? How much? 8. Atomic mass is 16. Okay, fine. Just out of curiosity, I'm asking, what is atomic number? Number of? Thank you. Right, number of protons. What is atomic mass? Protons plus neutrons. Okay, number of protons plus number of neutrons. Right, generally you will see that the atomic mass is double that of atomic number. Generally, again, it might not work for everything. Generally speaking, so you can see here oxygen 8 is atomic number, 16 will be the atomic mass. But again, it will not work. Maybe there will be plus or minus 1. There will always be a difference. But again, don't worry about it. Fine. So oxygen, I know, is going to have atomic number 8. Yes. Oh, sorry. Right, atomic number 8. Right, so we know configuration would be 2, 6. Okay, fine. Now let us check. We are checking whether we are getting the formula for CO2. That is the formula as CO2. Right. Okay. Now for carbon, I require 4 electrons. Yes. Any doubts? Okay. So I know for carbon, again there are 2 choices now. Okay. A beautiful element. Right, a beautiful element compound, and that's why you're having a chapter exclusively for it in your 10th class. You'll speak about it, why carbon is so special. But for now, you understand a little bit. I can tell you. Now you see carbon, there are 2 possibilities. Right, one is removing 4 electrons to make duplet. There will be 2 electrons if I remove it, or if I can add 4 electrons to this, it will become octet. 2, 8 is the configuration. Okay, sir, how do I decide this? Right. It does neither of them. It is not going to lose, it is not going to accept, and that is where the concept of covalent bond is there. Neither losing nor accepting, but sharing of electrons. But again, we are not going to go to that detail, but we are trying to establish with the help of ionic species only to get the formula. Okay, fine. Now there is this thing called as electronegativity. I don't want to tell you even the name because. Okay, fine. See, please understand. Okay, now if I take the sodium and chlorine, right? Now sodium formed a cation, that is positive charge, and chlorine formed an atom, which is negative charge. And we give the reason why how we give the reason is based on the electronic configuration, based on minimum energy expenditure. Right. Now here, since I have equal probability, right, you don't know what you're going to do, look at the other one. Then based on that, you will be able to decide whether I have to lose electron or whether I have to accept electron for carbon. That will decide later after deciding for oxygen. Okay. Right. Obviously, if one loses electron, the other has to accept electron. Both 2 species cannot lose electron, or 2 species cannot accept electron. Right. Okay. So oxygen is having 2, 6 as a configuration. Right. That means I have to add how many electrons? 2 electrons you have to add. Right. So oxygen will accept 2 electrons to form O. What? When you said your name, how loud it was. This is not that much as loud it is. What is it? It's correct. What you're telling is correct. Be confident. That's it. Right? I told you. The amount of negative charge should be equal to the amount of negative charge added. How much negative charge I'm adding? 2 electrons I'm adding. So obviously the negative charge should be 2 minus. If it's 1 minus, I told you we don't write the 1, we generally write just the minus. But if it's other than 1, any other number, we mention that number. And how do we write it? We write it again in the power. We write it like this: power 2 minus. This is how we write. Okay, fine. Now we understood that oxygen is losing electron. Sorry, oxygen is accepting electron. Right? So obviously carbon has to lose electron. There is no other go, isn't it? Fine. So if carbon, if it has to lose electron, obviously it has to lose how many electrons? 4 electrons to make duplet. Right? So carbon, can I say, is losing 4 electrons to form what? C? Correct. C4 plus. Absolutely right. Okay. So carbon in the power 4 plus. Okay. Fine. Now we'll try to write the formula. Cross. We'll try to do it. So I have C4 plus O2 minus. No problem. Now, don't worry about the signs, plus or minus. You just want to worry about the numbers, right? Say I put 4 here, I put 2 here for carbon. So how would I write it? C2O4. Is it okay? 2 comes to carbon, 4 goes to oxygen. So it becomes C2O4. Now, whenever you get these kind of situations where 2 and 4 are multiples, isn't it? You try to bring down the formula. You try to cancel the numbers and try to bring out the simplest formula possible. Right? So what will that be? If I bring that here, it will become 1 and 2. So it will become, got it? Right? So you understand, knowing the atomic numbers, knowing the electronic configuration, knowing the valency, you will be able to predict 99% of compounds this formula. Very simple. No, there is no mugging up from now on. Right? Okay, fine. So there is just 10 more minutes or 5 more minutes. So what I have to let you know is, okay, so if there are only one element forming positive charge, one element forming negative charge is okay. You know how to write the compound. Maybe we'll take some examples. Can you write the formula for aluminium oxide? Can you do it? Take your notebooks. What we did now, same way, write the electronic configuration, write the atomic number, write the electronic configuration, write the valency, find out the cation and anion, crisscross, tell me the formula. Aluminium oxide. Atomic number is 13 for aluminium. Oxygen, atomic number. What did you wrote last time? Now you have to form octet rule. Octet rule has to be satisfied. So for octet rule satisfying, how many electrons has to be lost? How many electrons has to be gained? For 2 of the things you do it. Simple. So the configuration will be 2, 8, 3 for aluminium, and it will be 2, 6 for oxygen. So all you have to understand is the octet, make the charges, crisscross. That's it. So there is some chat. What is it? Yes. Correct. Your answer is right. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. I'll write it. Or you want some more time? Okay. Right. So again, same thing. We are not doing anything extra, nothing cheesy, nothing. Very same thing what you're doing for the last 2 questions. Okay. So aluminium is atomic number 13, which will have 2, 8, 3 as the configuration. Oxygen, we know, is 8. So again, the same thing. 2, 6 as the configuration. Right. So for aluminium, to form octet, again, minimum energy conservation. Adding 5 electron, removing 3 electron. Removing 3 electron is easier, right? So aluminium will lose 3 electron to form. Absolutely. Al in the power we write 3 plus. Okay. For oxygen, again we saw last time, for it to satisfy octet, it has to accept 2 electrons to form O2 minus, and that's why we got the formula now, isn't it? I have Al 3 plus, O2 minus, crisscross, 2 comes to aluminium, 3 comes to oxygen, Al2, O3. Right? I think most of you should have gotten it. Right? If not, you can know it. See, there is no shame in telling that, sir, I didn't get the answer. Sir, I don't know this. Can you please explain again? There is nothing wrong. You are paying the money and I am getting paid for teaching you. Please understand that. right? So it is your responsibility, it is your right to ask whatever questions comes to your mind. It might be a stupid question, it might be a wonderful question, but doesn't matter. You really don't have to worry about what I will think, because now only I'm telling you, I am not going to judge you, even if you're going to ask the stupidest of doubt. No doubt is stupid according to me. Second thing, if you're going to feel shy that your friend or your colleagues, your classmates will will think bad about you if you ask a bad doubt, do not give half a dash about it. Okay, right? Because maybe you are brave enough to even ask that doubt, but your friend is not even brave enough to ask that doubt, and may eventually you are only helping or helping her. Okay, so there is no shame, right? Maybe in further classes, whatever be the doubt, please stop me right there and ask. Okay, so fine, guys. We'll see more example next class. For now, we'll wind it up. Any questions you have? Okay, fine. Thank you so much. Right, so the only homework I'm giving you is knowing the atomic numbers, right? Nothing else.
Thank you, sir.
Ah, good.